Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais. Andrew and Nick are on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. Welcome back to Matter of Facts podcast. I'm Phil. This is Nick. I cannot hear squat in my headphones, which tells me that I turned my own volume way down.
Oopsie poopsies. Technical difficulties.
Well, but here's the thing of it. It's not like y'all can't hear me, but when you can't hear yourself speaking, it does really weird things to your voice. But anyway. So, I've had a corker of a week at work, but like I was telling Nick right before we went live, I've had that weird experience every gun guy has eventually where like you find mags that are loaded and you lost them and you have no earthly idea where they went. And all of a sudden, oh, there they are.
Oh man, that was moving for me. I found so much ammo.
Dude, I've had like, because we talked about it last week. Like I have finally like started to reclaim my garage. I put up shelving. I organized things.
Nice.
And every time I'd lift another box, I'd find more stuff. Like more, here's some powder. I know there's some more gunpowder, and there's like 2,000 primers, and here's a box of bullets, and oh, here's 4 pounds of Herco that I have no freaking clue where it came from or how I got it or what I'm going to do with it. Although, turns out it's pretty good for loaded 9mm and 45 ACP, so winning unintentionally. And while I'm in the middle of doing all this, I'm making Nick a Nick box, which he will get at summer camp. It's like, I mean, I would call it the chinchiest compensation possible for a podcasting co-host, but like,
I don't know. Gunpowder and primers is always a win. And I have to look and see. I actually have to dig through because I found more large rifle Magnum primers than I thought I had ever purchased. I got to see if I can find all the large pistol primers I had because I don't have any large pistol cases anymore.
But do you have large Magnum rifle match primers?
I don't think I do.
Well, you're going to get you're going to get several hundred of them.
Which is definitely going to have to be downloaded for the 300 Win Mag, a scoosh on powder.
Yeah. Well, as I was going through all this stuff, like I was telling Nick, like, so the problem is years ago when I got like this just cornucopia of stuff from a reloading widow, apparently her ex-husband had a thing for big boomy things because I got like this huge sack of 338 bullets that I actually wound up giving away years ago because I couldn't find anybody that wanted to shoot them. I finally just got rid of them. And in the process of doing that, I also came away with like a couple pounds of H1000, a couple pounds of several pounds of Rotumbo that I was telling you about. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking up the load data for all this, and I'm like, I can do literally nothing with this. Like, I would have to go buy, or I would have to go buy a rifle and start up a reloading thing just to be able to use any of this junk.
Well, because most of that stuff is for Magnum cartridges.
Yes,
really.
And the biggest rifle I own is a 308 Winchester. So like
it'd be a little bit slow for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, once I found the large Magnum match rifle primers, that's when I was like, oh, this guy really liked to play with big boomy things that made little bitty holes. So you will be the recipient of one of our deceased reloading brethren's
wonderful
part of his collection.
I will take them out to the 500-yard range that I've just become a member of, and I will try to play darts with them, which I think he would have appreciated.
Okay, so Raggle is saying he would have bought it off me. So in the name of full disclosure, first of all, Raggle, I didn't know you could have used it, but I definitely knew Nick could have. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's my co-host, so he kind of gets first crack at it. But the other thing of it was I have actively, intentionally not advertised this stuff for sale.
Yeah.
Because I got it for free. And literally the woman that gave it to me, I mean, her whole thing was she asked everybody in the family if anybody wanted to get into reloading. Like she was giving away a turnkey.
Oh, yeah.
Here's all my ex-husband. Here's all my late husband's stuff. Here's his powder. Here's his. The man had shelves of brass cases in the garage. I mean, it was, this guy is what you and I are going to turn into in about 20 years.
Oof, that poor widow. The garage is going to fly off now that it's that much lighter.
Well, I gave her the number to a friend of mine that deals in brass
Mm.
and told her, I'm like, he will probably be more than happy to come out here and take all this off your hands.
Yeah.
And if y'all can't come to a deal, you can always take to a scrap yard and scrap it.
Oh yeah, just the poundage in brass scrap price alone is pretty decent money.
Yeah. So, it was really one of those
Troubles? Oh, there goes my lights.
Hold up a second. Testing.
I can hear you, Phil.
Could
You might be losing me though because of my internet.
It wasn't you. Apparently I bumped my microphone, my mic gain.
Oops.
So, anyway, that's going to make editing a lot of fun. I just have to remember 6 minutes in, I need to knock the gain. But before 6 minutes in, I need to bring the gain up slightly. Anyway, post editing nonsense. Anyway, so we got, I saw Stuart was in the chat. I see Raggle and I see Jim. So thanks for joining us tonight, guys. We're going to talk about the last thing on the list for reloading until we remember what else we were supposed to talk about. Because there's whole podcasts, dedicated to this. So we're not going to cover everything. But we are going to talk about recipes.
Yeah, recipes and a little load development.
Yeah. So, I guess from the perspective of a reloader, a recipe is exactly what it sounds like. It is this, you want to make this cartridge. They recommend a specific case, but most people use, whatever case they get a hold of. They're dimensionally close enough for most people's purposes that you don't have to get Winchester cases if the recipe calls for Winchester cases.
True.
However, if you deviate from the recipe in any way, shape, or form, you are now responsible for that deviation.
Yeah. This is why we'll get into this, but ladder testing and stuff like that is very important for load development.
110%. But like I said, it is this case, this primer, this much of this powder. Usually there's a range, there's a min and a max, or there's a max and you're advised to download 10% for a min load. Sometimes, like with the Hornady data, it'll give you approximated observed velocities out of their test barrel, and they'll tell you this was all tested in this length of barrel, so on and so forth, for either this grain weight of bullet or this specific bullet.
Yes.
That is a recipe. It is literally a how to take components and put them together in such a dimensions and with such a tolerance. And as long as you stay inside the guidelines, you can do so with pretty good confidence that you're not going to blow your gun or your hand or your eyeballs up. Because a company, either Hornady or RCBS or Spear or Hodgdon, some company put their name on the front of the book and said, we swear as long as you do what we say, you are within the boundaries.
True. The only other thing that you got to be careful of is the brand and type of primer you're using.
Yes.
Some brand primers are hotter than others. They will cause increased pressure, a little bit faster burn rate, a little bit faster velocities. Match primers and Magnum primers also tend to have a little bit higher pressure generated from them. So if the recipe does not specify a Magnum or Match primer, I would recommend loading closer towards the min if you are switching to those little higher octane primers.
Yeah, and if you are changing anything in your data, you need to proceed with caution. That is pretty fair advice across the board. Couple of things. This is the second show in a row that Stuart has asked me if I'm a vampire, and I'm not getting the joke.
I don't either. I've seen Phil, although I've never seen Phil's reflection.
But you have seen me in daylight.
I have seen you in daylight, but Wesley Snipes? You could be a daywalker.
I could be a daywalker.
You could be a daywalker.
Hopefully with a better credit score and no back owed taxes.
I would hope so.
Dr. Scary Guy, you have missed exactly nothing in the last 5 minutes other than me and Nick goofing around and me having microphone difficulties. So you're right on time.
Perfect.
Jim, I'm pretty sure you're being very facetious. No, you don't just fill the case to the top. You do not fill the case to the top and then smash a bullet down on top of it.
Well, I mean that...
Nick,
That
You
depends
do
on if that's
you
within the safety margin.
It's not for any case, any recipe I've ever seen.
Have you not heard of a compressed load, Phil?
But that's not powder up to the top of the case.
No, it's up to the bottom of the neck. I know.
Yeah. Stewart, so you saw yourself in the mirror and still showed up looking like a Taliban recruiter. Listen, buddy.
Yes.
My wife likes my beard, or at least she tolerates it, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to snuggle with you, so her opinion matters more than yours. Besides, I'm growing it out so I can cut it off and donate to Locks of Love.
There you go. Only 18 more inches to go.
Yeah. Jim is giving the disclaimer that we were going with. Always go with published loads. Do not take any recipe we discuss on this show to get day or ever and just go out your garage and brew up a bunch and throw them into your gun. Don't do that.
Nope.
If you blow your gun up, you are responsible for that, not me and not Nick.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said,
granted, I also redacted all of my 300 Win Mag loads because they are well in excess of the published maximums because it's fun.
I mean, mine only color outside the lines a tiny little bit, but I also have like reason to do so. Like you and I were talking about my 308 load, and like,
yeah,
I'm coloring outside the lines only in the technical sense because I'm like a full grain too hot according to the data source I'm using. But the data source I'm using is made for M1As, which are notoriously intolerant of hot 308 Winchester, so they're intentionally downloaded. So like, I know that the max load in that chart is intentionally downloaded.
Right. And if you were to look up, say, other manufacturers' recommendations for that, you are going to see different data. And that's because the data was created for a different purpose. Like semi-automatic load data is going to be slightly different than bolt action rifle data. It just is.
Yeah. Suffice to say, I will show my loads. I haven't redacted any of them. I am confident that you're not going to hurt yourself with any of them. But
I'm not confident with my 300 Win Mag loads. It is really right on the edge.
Well, all of mine are within somebody's boundaries.
Yeah.
But, so do we talk about load development first, or do we go to the recipe books first?
Well, I have some good load development stuff in the recipe page I threw together for this.
I do too. Not a lot, just like a tiny little bit.
Well, do you want to start with yours, or do you want to start with mine?
I'll toss mine in here first.
Go for it.
So, at Nick's suggestion, I have digitized my my reloading book, because originally this was my my recipe book. Because
Nice.
you know, I started writing a lot of these back before, like, you know, having a spreadsheet on your phone was a really convenient thing. So
Right.
I literally wrote everything down, and there's pages ripped out of here, and there's stuff in the margins. And interestingly enough, Nick, you remember how I told you that I lost my load data for a load and then I found it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's on this little half page right here. I literally found this jug of Midwest Powders WC 844 in my collection. I remembered that I intended to develop a recipe for it, but I couldn't remember actually doing the load development. So I was like, well, damn, I'm gonna have to put that on a list, and I'm gonna have to prime some cases, yada yada. And then I found this with a load circled, and I was like, oh, I guess I already did that.
Nice.
Anyway,
That's a win.
But at Nick's suggestion, I did go ahead and digitize all this, which has actually kind of been easier to carry around, honestly, because now I can just dial this up on my phone and take a look at it at any point in time. And this is just the most basic way you can track your recipes. I mean, it's a given cartridge, it's a type of powder, it's the charge weight of that powder, and then overall length, which is, you know, the loaded length of the entire cartridge. If you have those variables, and if you're not really picky about the brand of case, the brand of primer, and so on and so forth, and I guess I really should include in here like what kind of primer I'm using. But quite frankly, you know, like 308 Winchester uses large rifle primers, and 9mm uses small pistol primers, and so on and so forth.
If you are sticking with standard large rifle, standard small pistol, it's really not going to be that much of an issue switching from brand to brand. It's when you get into stuff like I have a 30-06 load for Magnum primers. I have a 30-06 load for non-Magnum primers. That is where you get a problem. Or, well, shouldn't say get a problem, could have a problem.
Yeah. I probably do need to note on here because rows 9 and 10, these two 357 Magnum loads for the for Accurate 7 and Accurate 9, these don't use Magnum primers. I remember that off the top of my head. This H110 and Win 296 obviously does, but I need to note that.
Yeah, I usually do, and if I have for rifles I'm attempting to make very accurate loads for, I will note the case that I'm using as well, because case volume does vary a little bit from manufacturer to manufacturer.
Yeah. And here's that infamous load that I always bring up, the 90 grain Hornady XTP in a 9mm case, 6.8 grains of power pistol at 1.070 OAL.
That's just going to be screaming.
I have chronoed that one at 1,425 feet per second out of a 4-inch barrel. It is blistering fast.
I need to see the velocity data off your Scorpion.
Oh, the Scorpion.
Yeah.
7 and
with a little bit longer barrel on it. I want to see if we can get just a smidge more velocity out of that.
I mean, power pistol's a fair bit slower than universal is, so it might actually pick up some more velocity in a longer barrel.
You'll probably gain 50 or 75 feet per second.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we might as well. I'll go through the rest of these tabs here in a second, but like,
sure.
It is worth pointing out that like when I start developing a load, I'm usually chasing one of a few different things. I'm either loading as cheaply as possible, so I'm just trying to make like bulk training ammo, Plinkett ammo. I'm usually aiming for a middle of the road velocity, something that doesn't beat the gun up, something that's at least full power, roughly approximates factory ammo. But in my opinion, I would put my plinking ammo toe to toe with like, you know, your Remington UMC, any of your bulk training ammo out there, because I know it's just as reliable and it's more consistent.
That's important.
Or I'm chasing performance, which can be velocity, it could be accuracy, it could be both. And I can't speak for Nic's experience, but like my experience has always been that usually if I'm chasing accuracy, not always. So this is a weird experience I've had. I have not had weapons in my custody. I have not had weapons in my custody that produce their most accurate load at maximum pressures and velocities.
I would agree with that.
Usually you come down like a grain, 2 grains, a little bit, you find that happy little load where the group size all of a sudden starts shrinking down. And like my experience with load development has been when I'm loading for accuracy, I will see the group size start like a shotgun pattern and it'll get smaller. Then all of a sudden it starts getting bigger again. And as soon as I see it open back up, like you might as well stop. I know what it's doing.
So there's an interesting thing about that. I do have one rifle that really likes the highest velocity I can possibly get, and that's my Weatherby Vanguard 300 Win Mag. Don't know why. The higher the velocity, the better that thing tends to shoot, which is why I don't let other people shoot my reloads for that gun, because the pressures I'm getting up to are considerable. But you'll actually see that in my ladder log that I have for my 30-06 load development in mind. So we can talk about that a little more there.
Yeah, I'm actually going to make one other little point. I'm going to knock this down so you can show yours. I've got some things in here, Nic, that like, bearing in mind, I'm a gigantic spreadsheet nerd. But some of these things you might actually enjoy implementing in your own spreadsheet, because
I have to take a look.
Yeah, I got to tease the audience a little bit though. But I was going to say that like I've had that experience with rifles. Now with pistol ammo, I've had the opposite experience where usually the hotter I drive a pistol round, it seems to get more and more and more accurate until I slam face first into the maximum load.
Sure.
That could be a universal experience. I just don't know enough reloaders enough to like know if that's a universal experience, but at least like that this power pistol load, I was going hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And when I hit the maximum load, that was the most accurate load. H110 in my 357, I got hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. and actually exceeded the maximum per the data by I think 6/10 of a grain. And I'll be damned if that round doesn't get more accurate the harder you drive it.
Interesting.
I've never had an experience with, at least with my guns, which is like sample size of 1, where my pistol rounds get less accurate when you drive them harder. I'm sure somebody out there has had the exact opposite, but like that's why it's important to do your own work.
It very much is. I mean, it's gonna change barrel to barrel, and it's gonna change action to action. It's gonna change bullet to bullet too. I mean, a lot of it is how much time the projectile is spending in the bullet and the barrel harmonics. Given how stubby pistol barrels are, and the fact that a lot of modern pistol actions, the barrel actually pivots. So if you are getting that round out of the barrel before the action begins to open and pivot, you are going to have a more accurate load because your barrel's in a more stable position.
I mean, there is something to that, although technically that bullet should have well left the barrel before that action starts to open up.
Should have.
Am I using the S word?
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's the pistol actions are just different than rifle actions, especially modern tilt barrel pistols and stuff like that. It's, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that's not the cause, but I'll throw mine up here.
Show it.
Let me get it. All right. So there it is. Up top, you guys can see I've got a few different 9mm Luger loads. I've got a 45 ACP load. I've got another 9mm Luger load.
Hey, Nick.
And a couple 30. Yes?
Hit your view button and zoom in a little bit.
Can I?
Yep. No. Look, right there you go.
Oh, I'm doing it on the spreadsheet. There it is.
That's what I was saying.
All right. So,
because some poor bastard out there is trying to look at this on an iPhone or an iPad, and that was not going to work.
That's true. So as you guys can see, I've got a few more vertical columns than Phil does. I've got column A is your caliber, column B is your bullet manufacturer, bullet weight, bullet type, because I do have different bullet weights and types by manufacturer. And then I've got a few different either loads I have tested with those bullets in various powders, and then various charge weights. If you look in the powder weight area in row 3 and 4 here, you can see I've got ranges. Those are ladder load tests that I did. Okay. And then I've also listed the exact type of primer next to that, as well as the type of case if it mattered. So, for instance, round nose soft cast lead with Winchester 231 did a ladder test using CCI small pistol primers and a mix of cases to an overall length of about 1.125, loaded 20. And then I've got some notes here for what I noticed. Leading in the bore. No matter what I did with those bullets, I had leading in the bore. Even though they were waxed bullets, according to the manufacturer, they should be fine for 9mm. Whatever it was, that lot of bullets was terrible. You can see the next round I did was, let's see, who made those? CKB Cast Bullets, a local guy that I deal with. I loaded from 3.3 to 3.5. They generally grouped well, didn't have any problems. Did start seeing overpressure signs at 3.6, even though Winchester 231 supposedly can go up to 3.8 grains with a 147 grain bullet. So
supposedly,
again, this is why we do these things. And then I usually keep track of, let's see, as you can see, there's another load here, duplicated prior load on a progressive press, but I made 1,800 rounds that time. I usually will note when and what press I have made the rounds on, so that if I notice a problem, I can go back and I can pull down. I can go through and look at those rounds I'd already loaded and see if there's an issue. Rago says he does 3.7 grains, 231 on his. If it works for your gun, that's great. I had pressure signs at 3.6, and maybe that's the difference in our guns. Hard to say.
Stewart's also saying that he also uses a spreadsheet. Not surprising because he's also a gigantic computer nerd like I am. But he has a summary tab and an individual tab for each load.
Nice.
But he's also tracking chrono data in his. So
I have kind of collated a lot of this data together for Phil because my spreadsheet's like 53 pages of different test datas. And speaking of ladder tests and test datas and chronographs, we'll get into a little bit of that down here. So, ladder tests. Here's an interesting thing that Phil will have noticed with some of his guns. Phil, as you can see here, I got a couple of rows colored here. That green row is a node that I targeted because, all right, it was the best group initially, but that you can see the yellow, a higher velocity load with a higher primer or with a higher charge weight for my 30-06, did have almost the same group size by MOA.
Which makes a lot of sense when you know what barrel whip is.
But any higher than that, I started getting overpressure signs.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do was I was going to back off to the 48.5, target the 48.5, and then do a further ladder test at 10th of a grain increments above and below that before I finally dialed in exactly what I wanted, which was about 48.4 to 48.6 grains. So Phil brings up barrel whip. For those of you guys that don't know, Stuart, you need me to zoom in more? I can do that.
I actually have a reel on our Instagram from God knows how long ago that is slow motion showing me test firing one of the ARs I built.
Yeah.
And you can see, if you keep your eye on the muzzle device, you can watch that thing do this with every round.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
you absolutely can.
Noticeably whipping up and down.
So you're going to notice if you do a very wide-ranging ladder test, you're going to have a couple of different nodes, which describe different velocities at which your barrel is at the most similar point for those rounds. Now, I don't know if you noticed, Phil, I've got a column labeled color. Neat little trick a friend of mine taught me for when you're doing ladder tests. You're going to set your target up at 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, wherever you happen to be setting it up. And what you can do, so you don't have to walk out to your target and circle those groups on the paper before going back to the bench and then resuming shooting, take a Sharpie and color the bullet. Literally, draw on the bullet. It will transfer onto your paper target. And you will see a ring of red around, say, the 47.5 grain loads. You can even do it with half and half colors, and you will see a circle. You will see a bullet impact that's half black and half red. It works out really nice for if you've got a busy range.
So let me offer an alternative to that. I have a bunch of targets that I use only for load development rifles at 100 yards. And the center bull on these is a 1-inch circle with a 2-inch circle superimposed over that. So, you know, any thing from 1 to 2 MOA is pretty easy to figure out. But it's 5 of these on like a square 8-inch basically sheet. And then I do that.
Yeah, you diagram them.
And I have this on the bench next to me, and I'm taking notes on it as I'm shooting. But this is also there so that as I pluck those rounds out of that MTM case, which is already labeled, so I know this first row is this much, the second row is this much, and I am like very intentionally taking these 5 rounds and I'm putting them into that top left target because that is where the 39.8 load goes.
That works too.
And then you do that, and then when I'm done, I go up, I take those targets back to my bench, bring them home, get the calipers, and I can measure them, and I can tell you exactly at that point what the most accurate load was, because I know I shot that load into that part of that target.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, kind of like it's not a question of like my method's better than Nic's or anybody else.
No, it's just 2 different methods.
But it's about have a method so that you know that group was made with this load, because ultimately that's what you're going to need to know if you're chasing accuracy. And the other thing, and Nick and I haven't talked about this too much yet, but I think this is just as important when you're doing load development. Catch your freaking brass.
Yes.
I will intentionally have either. So if it's my AR, I've got like one of the little, whatever they're called, the little brass
brass
nets.
catchers.
Yeah, brass catcher. My rifle, my bolt action makes this really easy.
It
But
does.
in a worst case scenario, if I am test firing something or testing a load and I don't have any good way to catch the brass, I'll intentionally bring a ball cap and just hang it over the side of the
it helps
over the side of the ejection port, and just anything to catch a few of those cases so that you can look at the primers. And at least in my experience, the primers are usually going to be the first thing that tells you you're pushing your luck.
Yeah, I agree. So after I do my ladder test, one of the things I always do, Phil, is I'll load up 20 identical rounds of my target range.
Yeah.
All right. And then as you can see here, I will record chronograph data for every single one of those rounds.
Properly nerdy.
Right. Find the max deviation, find the average MOA. And if I'm getting a reasonably accurate average MOA, so in this case, this load here, the average velocity was 2,663 feet per second. Max deviation was 79 feet per second, which is, in my opinion, unacceptable for a hand load. Still needed to be tuned. And the looks like the average MOA was 0.2765 MOA. So little over a quarter MOA.
Measuring from like center of the hole to center of the hole, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
You got to go from center of impact point because, well, as best you can go from center of impact point.
Well, I would say that if you want to I would say it's important to know that you're measuring center to center. But if you're going to measure outside to outside in your data set, that doesn't, I would think that, it doesn't matter as long as you're consistently measuring. Like,
that's fair. So because I shoot a couple different calibers, I go from center of impact.
Yeah.
Because then it's caliber agnostic.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, if you measure like outside to outside, then obviously big bore is going to have a disadvantage over small bore in terms of like the group size. But if
which is some of how 6.5 Creedmoor's factory rounds claim very tiny group sizes. Yeah.
But if what you're chasing is the most accurate in your weapon, then it doesn't matter as much as you're measuring outside to outside, and you're making the group size bigger because you're counting the half the bullet diameter in the group size. But it doesn't matter because like a 1.5 MOA group is still not as good as a half MOA group, even if it'd be a 0.3 MOA group if you subtract it for half the diameter of the bullet on your side.
Absolutely.
That was way freaking nerdier and wordier than it needed to be, which I'll know.
Well, no, it's important to know. It's important to know the deliberate choice that you are making for your measurement system, however you decide to do it. Now, as I said, 79 feet per second max deviation. That's not very good for a high accuracy load. We can do better. So the next thing I usually do then is I will do a ladder test, but with case length. Not case length, but ogive length on the bullet.
Yep.
And I will vary it from where I started. I will go out not quite to the max length because then you have feeding issues if you have a magazine fed. And I will not go below minimum, but I'll do like 20 or 30 thousandths in either direction because some bullets really like a little bit of jump that is coming out of the case before a little bit of movement before it hits the rifling. And some bullets really like to be seated into the rifling and then fired. So a little longer.
And then some bullets couldn't give a shit if they tried.
Some bullets just do not care. See our Match Kings? Do not seem to give a shit.
That has been my experience too.
But my 30-06, my Remington 700 action seems to do better with a shorter overall length. And I was able to get more velocity. Yeah, more jump.
Yeah.
It liked more jump. I don't know why. My rifle just likes that. And so that's what we do for that rifle. I was able to get my average FPS deviation down to like, or my max deviation down to like 18 feet per second, which is pretty good given IMR 4064 as the powder of choice and non-match grade primers.
So when I was doing workup for 308, I played with 168 grain Hornady AMAX first before I went to Sierra Match Kings.
Mm-hmm.
And in the name of full disclosure, and this is not like an endorsement of one bullet over the other, it's my one of one experience. I was able to get the AMAX a little bit under an inch at 100 yards.
Oh, sure.
But my experience with the AMAX was that they were so goddamn picky about overall length and about seating.
They're temperamental.
They're temperamental. They like to be like right, just making out with the lands of your rifling,
just brushing the lands.
Yeah, yep. They do not like to be shoved into it. Like if you chamber that round and then unchamber it and you can see the rifling like engraving itself on the bullet, you went too far.
You're gonna open up your group.
But if
stunning amount.
But if you have a lot of jump, those bullets do not behave themselves in my one of one gun.
I noticed the same thing in my 30-06 with AMAX bullets. That's why I went to Match Kings.
And when I went to Sierra Match Kings, not only did I ultimately, now it wasn't the same charge weight. It wasn't like I just swapped the bullet, ran everything else exactly the same. Like I did a whole nother workup. But when I switched to Match Kings, I managed to get a slightly smaller group. But the cool thing was when I started tuning overall length, that freaking bullet doesn't give a damn. Like, I mean, I loaded it from a hair under minimum length all the way until it was like halfway into the throat of the barrel, like intentionally longer than there was any reason to load it. Yep. And it just didn't care. It was boringly stable.
The bullets don't seem to, but you will find a point, at least I have always found a point at which my action was happiest, even though the change wasn't dramatic downrange.
Stuart saying now complicate the process by tuning the load to work the same in 2 to 3 different specific ARs.
You just drive yourself for the average.
You will drive yourself freaking crazy. I know it's doable, and I know Stuart's done it, but you will drive yourself bat crap crazy.
Yeah. I mean, so Phil, have you ever played with tuning neck tension on your rounds at all?
Have not played with neck tension. Haven't played with concentricity either. And like you and I were talking about before the show, like I acknowledge it makes a difference.
It can, yeah.
But it don't make enough of a difference, and I'm not a good enough shot to care.
And that was the point I wanted to get to is I did play with tuning neck tension on my 30-06 rounds. I did. I tuned it and tuned it and tuned it and tuned it and tuned it. And I did not find, and now this could be Sierra Match Kings again, just not giving a shit.
Quite possible.
Quite possibly. Could have been the cases I was using not being consistent enough to matter because they were federal gold medal match. So they were good cases. Not premium, but good cases. Mm-hmm. And it could be that I'm just not that good.
I mean, to be fair, I snuck a peek at your MOA calculations. I mean, like, this is the hell of being in this group of friends that we're in, though, is that, like...
We have a higher than average standard, and we consider ourselves not good enough.
I mean, I'll be the first to... I will be the first to out myself. That 308 Winchester load, I've had 4 rounds cloverleaf together at 100 yards. But I know 4 or 5 people off the top of my head that can shoot so well they make me look like an amateur. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those hells that we fall into when you're like a really experienced, accomplished shooter, and you have other friends who are really experienced and accomplished. Where like you constantly think you're the biggest rat bag bastard on the face of the earth. Like everybody can shoot better than I can, but if you walk out to your local range, you blow 95% of them off the firing line.
Yeah, but let's discuss the realities of scale there. Mm-hmm. All right. So, for instance, me now compared to me 7 years ago shooting pistols, I look abysmal compared to how I shot pistols 7 years ago because I was shooting 7,000 rounds a year.
That does average. Matter.
Right. Right now, I have been shooting 50 to 100 rounds a month. lately. I now have access to a nice private range again, so I'm going to be shooting a bunch more. In fact, I'm going out tomorrow with my wife. That will be a lot of fun. And doing a little bit of holster work while I'm there because they allow it, which is fantastic. But I'm not shooting sub 10th of a second split times and sub 1 second draw to first shot on target at times anymore. I'm just not, because I'm out of practice.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing goes for long range shooting. I mean, can I go with any of my rifles, with any of my pet loads, and put rounds consistently on target out to 500 yards? Yes, I can do that. Can I hit a golf ball at 500 yards? No. I know people that can. They are better than me. They are considerably better than me, but they also shoot 5 times more rifle ammunition a year than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it is practice. Some of it is innate ability because they're just steadier than I am.
Yeah, that's fair.
Some of it's equipment. I mean, I'm using a 1970s or 80s. I haven't checked the serial number on it. Remington 700 with a hunting weight barrel in an aluminum chassis. So the barrel's working against me. The action's probably not as tight as a modern action. Could that rifle perform better with a better barrel? Yeah, probably could. With a newer barrel that's not been shot as much? Absolutely. I've definitely noticed it is not as accurate as when I first got that rifle. In fact, I have been considering rebarreling it.
I mean, to be fair, 300 Win Mag is notoriously abusive.
That's the .6. That's the .6. The Weatherby and 300 Win Mag, I can definitely see erosion in the throat of that because of how hot the loads are.
Yeah.
But
let me click back over to my sheet. I want to show you a couple of these, and then we can talk through like our process for load development and warning signs at the same time. And then I have 2 other tabs in here for what was helpful and what wasn't, to kind of like talk about like either in the process or what things did or didn't make a difference. Like we've already started talking about a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we left off. These are my pet loads. And honestly, I don't know. I have the personality where like when the reason why there isn't a specific bullet list here, it's just 124 grain, is because I've got like 3,000 freaking, of the exact same bullets sitting on the shelf.
But are they 124 grain round nose flat points? Are they round nose? Are they jacketed? Are they gas checked? Are they cast lead lubed or cast lead coated?
But my point is, I've got 3,000 of the exact same bullet on the shelf that this load is made for. I have a box of like powder coated, some lead, some random shit. God only knows. Haven't made a load with any of that yet. If I have a pet load, it's made for a specific component. And I have a few thousand of those on the shelf. And when I run out of all those, then it's time to do more load development, play with something else, which I'm probably going to have to play with some of the stuff I have just to build some loads for some of it, because I know the days come where I have to load it.
Well, worst case, at least then you have the data ready to go, and you just, all right, great. I can't get the other components. Slap this together.
Part of what held me up though was the fact that like until recently, when I actually unearthed all this crap in my garage, I knew it was in there, but I didn't know where it was. But anyway, so here's what you do when you're a spreadsheet nerd. Is I built this sheet, which I'm continuing to kind of foots with. That's just called ready to load, and this mirrors all those pet loads I have, along with how many pounds of that specific powder I have, what primer type I have, the primer quantity, which is pulling off of this other sheet that's just primers, and that's literally my primer inventory. Good. I'm also going to build out another inventory for all the powder I have, not just the powder for my pet loads, but like all the random crap I got lying around that I just need to inventory finally. But what ready to load, then that's why I'm showing you, because I thought it was a good idea.
That is a good idea. I'm going to steal that idea.
I will actually send a copy of this to you if you want, because I mean, you're welcome to crib the formulas and everything.
I will do exactly that if you send it to me.
It's look up, which is not hard to use.
Yeah.
But
no, it's not. But if you've already got it built,
Yeah. Now here's the thing: you follow this across 308 Winchester, 168 grain, RMR
Mm-hmm.
4064. I've got only got 2 pounds of 4064 on the shelf, which is why I need to make another load from Fargate.
My soul.
2,500 large rifle primers, and that amount of powder will load 329 rounds, and I have
Mm-hmm.
220 bullets. Although I literally just got another 100 in, so up to 320.
Nice.
So what I need to do is I need to like build another sheet that I need to finish this powder inventory and build another one that's bullet inventory, and then start pulling that data into here instead of plugging it in. But the idea, what I struggled with when I started inventory all my reloading stuff and organizing and everything else, was I started to realize like I have these huge imbalances in what I have stocked. Like I have thousands of primers, but I'm running short on bullets for a couple of these loads. Or
Mm-hmm.
like I have tons of bullets between like my pet bullets and just the random junk that I've accumulated over the years, but I don't have enough of my preferred powder to load all those bullets. So now I have to like look at some of these other, like I've got 4 pounds of Herco just lying around that will work just fine in 9 mil, but I don't have a load for it. So that's kind of what I'm using this spreadsheet to do, is to point out to me like, hey, dummy. Matter of fact, I need to add a few things to this. Like I just got 1,158 grain bullets for
Nice.
this. But basically what this is doing is it's helping me realize like, okay, I've got 4,100 of these primers. I got enough powder, enough H110 Win 296 load, 1,500 of these 158 grain 357 magnums, but I've only got 1,000 bullets. So to sure that up,
Mm-hmm.
I need to buy another 500 next payday. And then
Mm-hmm.
down here, you see that powder will load and bullets on hand is a lot closer balanced for a lot of these things. That's telling me that I'm probably okay with that. I should probably look towards
Mm-hmm.
buying more powder instead of buying more of these bullets. This cheat is helping me figure out how to restock my reloading components in a little bit more of a concerted, rational way than just, oh, it's on
Mm-hmm.
sale, let's buy.
Yeah. Or like when a friend of yours, a friend of the show, sends me a 30-pound box of brass. I don't have enough bullets to load all that brass.
Yeah. Stewart asked, it's each primer quantity separate? And the answer is no. So like I don't have, if I'm showing like small pistol primers, that's the same 5,500 small pistol for all of these. I understand what Stewart's saying.
Makes
Is
sense.
like, like probably the better way to do this would say I have 3,600 of these for this, and I've got 6,000 of these, and if I've got this and this, then that's ostensibly like 9,800 primers I would need to load that quantity of both. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand what he's
Mm-hmm.
saying. For me, though, I don't load I don't load a whole ton of a lot of these. Like this 125 grain 38 special. I mean, that's for my J frame, and I don't know if you could tell from the grimace on my face, but shooting a 14-ounce J frame with really hot ammo is not a fun, pleasurable experience. It's pretty much something I do once a year just to remind myself how a double action trigger works. So I
Yeah.
don't ever feel there's a reason why there's only 300 of these bullets in stock, because I've already got a bunch loaded and I really don't want to load a lot more.
Because you really don't want to shoot a lot
I
more.
really don't like shooting that gun. But I saw what Stewart had said earlier that he actually has like, I have this many loaded. I think you've done the same thing, and that is
Mm-hmm.
probably something, and it's probably something that I don't know that I'll ever get to, just because like the way that my backstock for ammo works is that I have ammunition that is earmarked for like break in case of emergency, don't shoot unless it is your last resort type of ammo.
Mm-hmm.
And that is primarily like 9 mil, a bit of 7.62 by 39 for the AK, and a fair bit of 5.56 for the ARs. It's the home defense ammo.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
everything else is pretty much on those shelves in the garage, where it's kind of, I mean, I measure this stuff and how many ammo cans I have loaded.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how many thousand rounds it is. It's an ammo can. It's a 50 cal ammo can full of ammo. It's a lot.
Well, so the one of the reasons why I do that, why I track how much I loaded when, is for quality control for myself.
And that is a very valid reason.
You know, because I'm not the only one that shoots this ammo. And thank you, Stuart. I really do appreciate the brass. That's going to be fantastic.
In the name of
though I do wonder who in the hell at your range was shooting that much 25 auto.
A masochist.
Seriously, I've never seen an entire box of 25 auto brass in one place at one time, even though I've seen people shoot it. I don't know. But yeah, because my wife also shoots a lot of my reloads. So if I find a problem with some of the ammo I've loaded, I need to go back and check through all that ammo.
That's fair.
If it blows up on me and I loaded it, fine. Okay, I fucked up. I earned the consequences. I'm not having it blow up on her.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
So this is what I was talking about. This is the one thing I have inventoried so far, which is just primers.
Yeah.
And I get someone go ahead and throw in the Matthew McConaughey. Those are rookie numbers. You need to bump those up. I get it. Cute. Mm-hmm. But like, this is something I'm probably going to also reproduce for bullets and for powder eventually. I just, we're actually getting ready to go on a short weekend vacation. So nice. It's going to have to be another weekend when I'm not otherwise spoken for, that I can spend some time in the garage just with my phone. Now that I have my reloading spreadsheet on my phone, just, inventorying stuff and plugging numbers. Mm-hmm. But I will do the same for powder and for bullets. Just kind of not there yet. And then this is something I will probably I might delete this tab out, or I might just leave it here. But this was a very quick little throw some of the load development stuff, again, from the old school recording method into the spreadsheet in no real. So bearing in mind that like when I started out a lot of these notes, it's literally like handwritten notes in pencil on a sheet of paper. It wasn't envisioned to be a nice, pretty spreadsheet.
No.
But since we were going to talk about load development at some point, the way I traditionally do load development, which is, I imagine, is very similar to a lot of guys, I use ladder loads. Mm-hmm. If I have load data that has a published minimum and a published maximum, if it's a powder I have absolutely zero experience with, I will usually do like start at the minimum and work my way up to the maximum.
I agree.
Personally, I have here a note like 10 to 13% each step increase. Now, here's the thing of it. Like, I kind of cheat this around a little bit because like going up 10 to 15% per low, per ladder is a good signpost to start with in a lot of cartridges. However, in cases where you're dealing with like a small volume pistol cartridge and a very fast powder, there is no 10% because 10% might be the difference between minimum and maximum.
Correct.
So you have to use this you have to take this with a grain of salt. If I'm dealing with a cartridge that is like a small volume cartridge, like 9mm, and it has a very narrow window between minimum and maximum, I will usually load the SOB to minimum, take it out and test fire it, and if it cycles the gun reliably, done. Not pushing a maximum with a really small window. Now, on the other hand, like the power pistol I was playing around with to develop that 90 grain load, I actually would have to look it up to remind myself, but that actually had a pretty generous window between minimum and maximum, so there was a lot of room to like play around until I found the load that I liked.
With pistols, especially because of how tight the load windows can be, I will go with 1/10 of a grain or 2/10 of a grain steps from minimum to maximum. And I will shoot a couple of rounds, pick up the brass, inspect the primers, inspect the brass, and if I don't see any problems, I'll shoot the next 5, and the next 5, and the next 5, until I get to max. And if I don't see any problems there, then I will pick a load to chronograph. Because typically, so with pistol loads, when I was building my 147 grain load, I was trying to mimic 147 grain HSTs as close as I could with cast lead, with coated cast lead bullets. Because I don't know about you, Phil, but dumping 500 rounds of HSTs really hits the pocketbook a lot more than cast lead 147 grains. And my carry ammo is 147 grain HSTs. That's what lives in my magazines on my hip all the time. So all of my training ammo for 9mm pistols are 147 grain loads mimicking HSTs. So every single trigger pull, I am mimicking my self-defense ammo. There will be no recoil change, or there should be no recoil change, no shooter felt change, switching from one to the next.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I paid that much attention to mimicking 124 grain HSTs when I built my my go-to training ammo for 9mm.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly like full power. At least it's not a powder puff load. It's gonna have some recoil to it.
Well, and the other reason why I mimicked that more potent load was for knocking down plates in competition pistol shooting.
As you do.
115 grain loads don't always single tap knock down plates. 147 grain loads, I have found, very reliably knock those plates over.
All right. So before I drop this out and we get back to more of a conversation instead of a show and tell. So there's this part right here: 5.56 head case stamps and water weight and grains. So Nick, you remember me telling you that, like, for my quote unquote precision 5.56 rounds with 77 grain Match Kings, I still use range brass.
Yeah,
I'm not. In the name of full disclosure, I recently bought a couple boxes of really, really expensive, pretty nice Peterson brass for my 308 Winchester. I'm not spending this kind of money to load up a bunch of 77 grain Match Kings for out of an AR in a rack grade AR. It's not.
Yeah, you're not going to see worthwhile results from that.
But however, bearing in mind that my local range has a lot of police officers on it, and you can reliably get certain head stamps in very high volumes that have only ever been shot one time, I decided to do something that someone had taught me a long time ago, which was, if you want to compare a bunch of different cases and you want to make sure that you have approximately the same volume. Now, this isn't going to have a gigantic effect on the net result of your rounds. But if you just want to like right size to make sure that all these cases have approximately the same internal volume, which does contribute to the end velocity and the standard deviation between your minimum and your maximum, what I was taught was you plug the primer pockets with, in my case, I use silicone RTV because I turn these into my dummy rounds.
Anything
afterwards.
will work.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard some people say just leave the spent primer in them, but I've always been a little worried about that because, like, the likelihood that water could seep into that primer pocket to fill it inside the primer. Bearing in mind that primer should be pretty much sealed in the primer pocket, like airtight. So it should airlock itself. But I am paranoid about things. So I filled the primer pockets up with silicone RTV. You put the round on your scale, zero it, fill it to the brim, just to the absolute top of the neck, with water, and make sure it's not like, I forget what's called the meniscus, where it's like mounting up,
beating over the top of the case. Yeah,
don't do that. You want it dead even on the top, and then weigh it again and record that. And doing that, assuming you're using either a whole bunch of cases that have been once fired in your firearm, or they've all been resized. The point is that you want the outside dimension of the round as perfectly similar across all these different case heads as possible. So you want the outside dimensions the same, you want them trimmed to the same length, you want them all dealt with the same, so that what you're really measuring is the internal volume remaining. And that's what I measured using the weight and grains of the water that the cases were filled with. So what that exercise taught me was that Lake City, IMI brass, WMA brass, and FC is all within like a couple tenths of a grain.
Very considerably close.
Yeah. And this,
especially for like a semi-auto.
Yeah, proud Texan saying always size and trim them first, because obviously
For
if you
best consistency.
yeah, especially if you're talking about like range pickup brass that didn't necessarily come out of your gun or didn't come out of the same chamber, then you could be introducing external variants there, which is going to influence your final measurement. Like, you have to treat this like a bit of a science experiment and control for as many variables as possible. D3V arms. You are not just late or fashionably late. You are like an hour late. But this is on
That's
YouTube
right.
and Rumble, so you can rewind back to the beginning and start all over later.
So what Phil's illustrating here is not just that they hold the same weight in water. It's that the volume of the cases is dramatically similar to each other.
With a few exceptions.
With a few exceptions. But
so L2
the point of that is that because the volumes of the cases are similar, or as similar as you can get them, your pressures generated for the same weight of powder will be closer to the same amount of pressure.
Yeah.
And the similar pressure curve.
Now, what I came away with, though, was a couple of... Now, I don't have it marked on here. L2A2 was a full grain low, lower than everything else, which I load those for like my bulk plinking ammo, but when I'm loading 77 grain Match Kings, I intentionally exclude those. But there's several other case stamps I intentionally exclude. Wolf is one of them.
Yeah.
Wolf is so L2A2, I'm not sure if it's the web or whatnot. Like, I'd have to section a case very carefully to look for dimensional differences that I just
send
don't
me
have.
Some. I'll run them through the wire EDM machine at work and send them back to you.
I'll have to find some that don't have primers in them, because right now I'm working through a whole bunch that are primed.
Oh, okay.
But the next time I get one, I'll grab that and probably a Lake City or something as a comparison point, or maybe an IMI.
Throw it in the Nic box, and I'll cut it in half after summer vacation.
Yeah, but the thing of it is that what I noticed was that L2A2 was a little bit low on the water weight, which means that something in the web or something's a little thicker than everything else, because it's thicker, therefore less water weight. And Wolf is the opposite.
Wolf is really thin.
Wolf is really thin.
Until you get to Wolf pistol brass. I got a bitching point about that.
Yeah. But in any case, to me, like what I recommend this for, if you buy a box of really expensive brass, or if you have a bunch of Lapua, or even if you have like 100 of the exact same case head from the exact same run of cases, like there is a point at which you're chasing ghosts going down these roads. But to me, if you want to load more consistent than average ammo using whatever nasty range pickup bullcrap you can get a hold of at your local range, an exercise like this does help to right size all that rifle brass together. Now, for pistol brass, I don't think it makes enough of a difference, but I'm not trying to make like tiny little groups with a pistol because I can't shoot that well.
Except for the types of pistol cases that have a bulge out in the bottom of the case. I wish I would have grabbed a picture of one while I was going through and sorting cases today. There are a few case head stamps that you will find, especially in 9mm, where the case walls come down, step in, come down again, and then come across the primer, the flash hole of the primer. That dramatically changes the volume of your case and will dramatically increase the pressure of your 9mm rounds. I have seen that cause detonations.
Wait a second. Are you talking about like the outside looks fine, but the inside is like there's a shelf inside?
The outside is perfectly straight.
I have seen those.
The inside is stepped in, and on some of them, it's as much as like 30 thousandths of an inch. Per side. It's dramatic.
It's noticeable with like naked eye. No, don't have to look at it hard or anything. You just glance down the case, and it almost, the first time I saw one, it'll look like
a double charge of powder when you drop the normal charge in.
Nick, you've had this experience of picking up range brass, and you have like
case in a case.
Case in a case. Have you ever had a case in a case?
40 and 9mm do that a lot. No.
Oh yeah, I've had a 40 and a 45 and a 9.
Oh Jesus.
I'm not going to make the obvious reference about a type of social video that involves like things inside of things in threes, but it was like that.
Raggle's right. Blazer is very famous for having those stepped cases. So is Wolf.
Yes.
Sometimes Tula as well, depending on the Tula batch. So just if you guys pick up range brass like I do, like Phil does, if you got a buddy like Stuart that sends you a big case of brass, at the very least, when you're going through and depriming those and inspecting them before you run them through your tumbler, just set those
Junk
aside. Not necessarily junk. If you get enough
Junk
to
that
make a
crap.
pet load for it, it's fine.
Junk it.
You could.
Junk it.
Usually those cases split pretty quickly anyway because they're extra thin on that upper section.
I smash them with a hammer because I don't want to load them and no one else should either. Yeah. Raggle is dogging me out in the comments, by the way, saying, so you did all of this in caps and never got into neck sizing or turning. Correct.
Okay. Raggle, here's the thing. If you are using generic range pickup brass in a semi-auto, neck sizing and tuning really are not going to make that much difference to you. They're really not.
I encourage you to prove us wrong.
Yeah, if you can prove us wrong, that's fine. If you are in the caliber of shooters where you are, say, to the point where your shooting will be disrupted by a slightly looser neck tension, I'm not. I'm not that good. I'm just not. If you are, great. Do that. We were discussing in the Patreon chat this morning. Some of the guys, when they load their rounds, they leave them 10 thousandths longer, and then the day before the match or the day of the match, they seed them that extra 10 thousandths, so there's not an oxide layer holding the bullet into the neck and creating extra neck tension. I personally do not believe it creates enough tension to alter that round in a notable way.
10 out of 10.
I could be wrong.
Do not believe I shoot well enough that is what's going to knock me out.
That was my next point too, is I know I am not a good enough shot for that to be the variable that kills me. It'll be my powder measure throwing a 1/10 of a grain heavy and giving me an extra like 40 feet per second.
I mean, dude, I was doing backflips to get like just over a half MOA load out of a hunting rifle. I am not the person who is going to be making 0.2, 0.3 MOA shots and groups.
You could.
No,
I could have you doing it.
I'm sure I could. But,
I could get you doing it.
But the point remains. There's a lot of tightening up on the loose nut behind the trigger that has to happen before turning the necks is what's going to do it.
I just look. Could all of these things matter at the highest end of marksmanship?
110%.
Probably.
Look,
especially at very extended ranges where every foot per second difference between rounds matters.
Look, I used to know an F-class shooter, 308 Winchester at 100 yards or at 1,000 yards. This guy took his brass prep to a level that would make most of us light our houses on fire out of frustration.
Probably.
But when you're shooting 308 Winchester at 1,000 mother effing yards, it matters. When you're competing at the level he was, it matters. When you're competing, not competing at the level I'm not, it doesn't matter that much. I wasn't qualified to carry this guy's range bag.
No.
So that's why every time we have these debates and somebody's like, well, it matters. I'm like, well, Hunter, yeah, it absolutely matters. But the tenths or the hundredths of an MOA difference it makes are going to be completely overshadowed by the loose nut behind the trigger.
Or by the quality of the barrel in your rifle.
Yes. I mean,
because look, those guys that are shooting those tight of groups at that distance, they are changing barrels often because they're worn out.
Okay, so not even to toot my own horn, and Nick and I were talking about this right before the show started, and probably right after the show started. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just mega jaded, and maybe I have way too many friends that are way too good of a shot, but like to me, clover leafing 4 shots together at 100 yards doesn't feel like a massive accomplishment.
It is with factory ammo, I would say. Not
factory ammo.
No, I know. What I'm saying is, do you have to be a good shooter to do that? Yes, you have to be better than average. Phil brought up in the Patreon chat earlier, what do you think the average shooter is capable of?
I still need to go back and see what the consensus was, unless you have.
We didn't have one.
Everybody, was it just was it a bar fight?
Well, no, it was. Well, I set I said that, so a standard like pistol torso target, like the 2x3 foot sheets you grab at the
Yeah.
range. I said at 25 yards with an open sighted pistol, the average shooter is all over that paper
Oh
with
God,
maybe a couple off paper. That's your average shooter.
that's depressing.
Man, I've been to a lot of public ranges and I've seen a lot of targets coming in, and the group sizes are dramatically large, and that's slow fire on a square range with static targets.
I told you the story about the first time I went to get my concealed carry permit, and like
Mm-hmm.
I was giving my friend the instructor's side eye because he backed the target up to 5 feet and said, "Okay, fire your rounds." And I'm looking, I'm like, "That's it? Like I could reach out over the table and almost touch the target."
Uh-huh.
And then I found out that a couple people had to reshoot, and I was absolutely stunned.
Yeah.
I was like, "There's no rat." Now you shoot at 5, 10, and 15 feet, so 5 yards.
3, 5, and 7 yards for the Illinois class, I think it
In
is.
Louisiana, it's 5, 10, and
Yeah.
15 feet, which is 5 yards. I was stunned that several people had to reshoot. And all you have to do is just keep your rounds on the torso target.
Yeah.
Some instructors are really, really pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable, and they say if you get on paper,
That's rough.
yeah, don't.
So the question I asked and you didn't ever answer was, so for rifle shooting at 100 yards, are you talking with a scope or are you talking with irons?
In this case, it was with a scope, 12x.
With a scope, with a 12x scope, I would think an average shooter with no training should be able to throw a 3 or 4 inch group at 100 yards. And I do not think I don't think that is underestimating or overestimating them. I see a lot of people. I have seen a lot of people at 100-yard rifle range ringing 6-inch gongs consistently at 100 yards. Not terribly difficult to do.
So what you're telling me is that my yardstick is just perpetually screwed up by the sheer number of really good shooters I know.
I think it really is. I think it is because when I went to my latest concealed carry renewal, so standard target, IPSC kind of target, the A zone is like this, the B zone is like this. I raced through my mags. I raced through as fast as I could my 10 rounds at 3, my 10 rounds at 5, and my 10 rounds at 7, just ripping the trigger, just because I know I put all of my rounds mostly in the A zone with 2 in the B zone, shooting as fast as I could. Could I have kept them all in the A zone in probably like a 2.5 or 3-inch group? Yes. Yes, I could. That's not self-defense shooting, in my opinion. You're not taking your time and making a perfect sight picture every time.
So funny anecdote before we move on to the last couple of bullet points. But the first time that I got my concealed carry permit, I was about this close to having to reshoot.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that 5 foot mark, I was mag dumping into the target. It's 5 freaking feet on a torso target.
One-handed, offhand, upside down. Let's do this.
Dude, freaking Ray Charles could have put all of his rounds on target. I mean, it ain't that daggum hard. But I discovered something worrying when you shoot at a paper target at that range and it's like hung at the top.
The paper
like
flaps around.
Yes.
Yeah.
So halfway through that first magazine, that paper starts to do this.
It does. It starts to stand right up. You start losing targets.
Yeah. So I had to very quickly back off the trigger, let it flat back down, and pace myself after that. Funny story. Things you don't think of when you're like, oh, it's 5 yards. Who could miss this? Well,
exactly. Yeah, the muzzle blast will blow the target up.
Yeah, well, the things you learn the hard way. But anyway, so we talked through load development. Now, warning signs, I got 3, and you're probably going to agree with me on all these.
Mm-hmm.
So first and most obviously, your primers are going to tell you when you're pushing your luck.
A lot of times, yes.
So understand that like the edges of a primer, they got a nice little radius to them, and you should still see that radius for the most part when you're done shooting.
You should, yeah, in most cases.
Yeah. If the primer flattens, meaning like the nice radius edge of that primer starts to look like a right angle in the primer pocket. That's a hint.
Getting a little high.
If you actually see the primer looks like almost like it melted out of the primer pocket and it starts to overlap the back of the case head just a little bit, that's another warning sign.
If it starts to push your firing pin back into your bolt, you need to stop.
Yeah, that is your final warning that you are done horsing around, is that if the very center of the primer has a divot almost like in the shape of the hole in your bolt that the firing pin pokes out of, it looks like it has a little orifice in the primer cup. That is your final invitation to quit screwing around before something really unfortunate happens to you.
Correct, because you're about to pierce that primer.
Yeah, and piercing the primer is not the worst thing that could happen, but it's bad.
It's not good.
It's not good. The worst that could happen is
spontaneous disassembly,
kinetic rearranging of the parts of the firearm. The other two things. So I find, at least in my experience, and you may have had this as well, but like usually your groups, you remember how I was talking earlier about how with my rifles, the group size gets smaller, start to get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
When the group size starts getting bigger, like to me, there's not a lot of reason to keep going a lot higher unless you're really, really low in a load ladder and you think you have enough range. You have enough room to get back into another load.
Get back to that second node we were talking about earlier.
Like for my 308 Winchester load, I didn't hit that. By the time I got to that best load, I was close enough to the max. I was not going to get to the next node before something unfortunate happened.
And that might just be that powder's only node of accuracy for your firearm. Yeah.
So when the group size starts doing this, I mean, there's probably not a reason to push a lot harder, but that's also a hint.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one, the one that's worrying, maybe a one-of-one experience. So when I was doing load development for my 357 Magnum, apparently I developed a death wish. Yeah. And Hornady's data is notoriously, in my experience, notoriously conservative.
I would agree with that.
And I loaded to the maximum of what Hornady says you can load H110, and I was having a lot of fun. I was making a fireball about this friggin' big out of my 4-inch barrel. I was beating the piss out of freaking steel at the range. It was a nice, accurate, small grouping for a 357 Magnum load. Made a hell of a lot of noise, put a great big old smile on my face. It was moderately arousing. I was having a lot of fun. And then the devil popped up on this shoulder right here and said, imagine how much more fun it'd be if you went a little bit hotter. And then there was supposed to be an angel over here, but there was just another devil saying, oh, no, don't go 0.2 of a grain hotter, go 0.4 of a grain hotter.
That's a big jump in a pistol load.
So I start shopping reloading data, and I realize that Hodgson says you can go a lot hotter than Hornady does. So I start loading them up, and I take it out to the range, and I start with the verified safe load, the one I've already shot, hasn't kinetically to some of my gun, and that's a lot of fun. And then I put the next 6 of them in there. This is 0.2 of a grain hotter than Hornady says is the limit. And I shoot those, and the fireball is bigger, and the noise is more, and it's even more fun. And then I put the next 6 of them in there, and this is 0.4 of a grain hotter than Hornady claims. Still within boundaries, according to this other reloading data. And the first shot I heard through ear protection, I heard my gun making a new noise.
You heard the frame ring.
It sounded like a ringing. And I thought to myself, well, this is a weird time for tinnitus to pop off. Because,
that is what it sounds like.
Been around aircraft a lot, loud music, subwoofer competitions, lots of barely muffled engines in my youth. Like, my ears are shot. So I just naturally assume, like, oh, I'm hearing things. Drop the hammer again. I heard the same noise again. Popped that cylinder open, popped those rounds out, looked at the primers, and those 2 primers I had popped were the flattest sons of bitches I've ever seen in my life. The 6 that I shot before that, they looked all right. Mm-hmm. But this is one of the... Now, ringing firearm is probably a ringing Ruger is probably a bit of a unique warning sign. But I
You
will
really only get it in revolvers.
but I will give y'all this as a warning. And this was told to me by several old hand reloaders that there are certain powders that are notorious for blowing guns up, not because they're bad powders, but because they're really good powders. Because like 357 Magnums or 44 Magnums or 454 Casuls that take Win 296 and H110, and they will drive a bullet harder and harder and faster, and the group will get smaller and smaller, and the round just works. The harder you push it, the better it works, until you go 1/10 of a grain too high and it blows the gun up.
Yep.
And that's where I was flirting with at 4/10 above the published maximum. I was at the point where the gun was making noises and the primers were as flat as they could be. So I would take that as your warning sign. And, yes, this is a kind of a funny story and it's a revolver anecdote, but in a semi-auto, if your bolt carrier is slamming into the back of the receiver, if you start to see funny wear marks on your semi-auto, if the slide is beating the dog hug shit out of the back of the frame, if a semi-auto suddenly starts to work a lot harder than it normally would, that's a hint.
If your semi-auto starts randomly ejecting live rounds out of the magazine, out of the top of your slide when it's cycling back, you're cycling it way too hard and you need to back off. I've had that happen twice now.
Also, two other things, since you got me thinking about it: ejection pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Now, two things about ejection pattern. First of all, as you load hotter and hotter and hotter, you will watch that ejection pattern start to change direction.
Yep.
But that only tells you that the action's running faster and faster and faster. Mm-hmm. If the ejection pattern ever starts getting really inconsistent, I encourage you to stop what you're doing and think about why. Because certain firearms are kind of notorious for having a really boringly consistent ejection pattern.
Yes.
So if you get a round ejects that way and then this way and then that way and then straight back over your shoulder and then straight forward again, and it's like a shotgun.
Something is not going right.
Something's up. Either your powder charge was just wildly inconsistent, or you're getting really unusually uneven burn, or you had some moisture in your cases, or something's goofy. If you're getting that much, because when your ejection pattern is all over the place, to me, that's two things. Either A, your ejector or your extractor are jacked.
Yeah.
Mechanical problems. Or your pressure and velocity are wildly all over the place, because that's influencing how fast the action runs, which is going to influence where that brass goes. So like all those things, how your firearm's behaving is going to give you a warning that you're doing something you probably should think twice about.
Last one here that I did mean to bring up, and Stuart brought it up. You can sometimes see when you get to very high pressures, you'll start to get a ring on your brass.
Down here. Down here, like right above. So
just above your ejection or your extraction ring.
So thank God I have a pen. So in this case, this is your neck up here. This is your case head. The case web, which is kind of like ostensibly about the thickest part of the brass. It's
the
down,
bottom of the case.
It's down in this area.
Of the interior.
Right above that web is where you will start to see that bright brass ring developing around it. And that is because what's happening right there is that the brass is stretching. Mm-hmm. Which means the minute you see that ring, probably the next thing that's going to happen is that case is going to it's going to
suffer a case head separation.
Yeah. The bottom of the case is going to go backwards. The front's going to stay where it is. And it's exciting. Usually, exciting is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the gun will cycle just fine, and if it's a semi-auto, jam another round right up into the back of that case, and then you're really jammed up. Don't try to fire that round. Hopefully it won't go into battery. It shouldn't.
If it goes into battery, we have a whole nother different set of questions to ask.
I have seen an AK suffer a neck separation from the case on a
Oof.
heavily reloaded case and jam the neck up into the rifling when it cycled home.
Ah.
And fortunately, the guy felt something was weird and he tried to extract the round. We had to mortar that bitch to get that round out of there. And then looking in with flashlights, that's weird. There's a giant chunk of brass in the middle of the barrel.
Oofta.
Yeah, it was a clapped out old AK that he was running. I would call them abused cases that he had reloaded many, many times. It's the only time I've ever seen a case neck come off. Usually, if you have any kind of case separation, either the whole case splits or you get a case head separation.
Yeah.
That's usually what you see. In pistol brass, it's almost always a split in the case, up near the case mouth from being overworked. Don't know how he managed it, but he did. Fortunately, he did not fire the weapon.
It would have been bad.
I can only imagine it would have led to a bullet being jammed in the barrel and possibly destroying the barrel.
Potentially.
Maybe not like explosively destroying the barrel, but definitely causing a bulge in the barrel or just a stuck projectile. Not good.
So any other warning signs you can think of? Like those moments in time where your gun and or your ammunition is telling you loud and clear, like you're doing something that's a little bit dumb.
Unburnt powder in your action.
There's a good one.
If you find what looks like the powder that you dumped in the case laying down in the action of your firearm, you have something seriously going on and you need to evaluate what's going on. It's usually not an overpressure round. It's usually moisture in your powder or moisture in your prime.
Or a critically underloaded case, which will
also...
also...
it could be a critically underloaded case, yeah. Which can also be a big problem.
Yeah, which can also give you that weird ejection pattern, it can give you wildly inconsistent, velocities. But because I had them in 38 Special where I was getting not a ton, but enough unburnt flake powder that was obvious.
Yeah,
and it wasn't moisture in the cases. In that case, it was just the fact that I loaded those cases to the bare minimum, and there was so little powder in them and so little pressure being developed that, like, a little bit more powder and crimping the crap out of those bullets into the case, that solved the whole problem.
Yeah, getting them to burn a little bit better.
Yeah. So now, what was helpful? Take judicious notes.
Yes. Take judicious notes. Do your research on the different loads before you start, because like Phil found, this manual, pretty conservative. We can go a little hotter. Well, it turned out the next going hotter, probably too hot.
Yep.
If you get yourself, say, a Hodgkin powder, go to Hodgkin, grab their load data. Go to Hornady, grab their load data for their bullets for that Hodgkin powder. Then go to Lyman, grab their data for that same powder. You collate all three of those, you see where they overlap. If you stay within that overlap, you're in a really safe place because it worked for 3 different companies and 3 of their lawyers have all said, yep, this is fine.
So I will push back gently on what Rag was saying about get a chronograph. I literally refused to buy a chronograph for so long that someone who shall remain nameless, I wasn't going to name him, Stuart literally sent me one because he got so pissed off that I wouldn't buy one myself.
Look, if you are doing any kind of accuracy chasing with rifle rounds, a chronograph is going to be one of your best friends because it will show you consistency at the barrel, even if you are doing bad things on the target.
So I will just say this much. I would put it in the realm of there's a bunch of things to consider before you get a chronograph.
I agree.
Because you can do an absolute ton of reloading before the chronograph becomes a thing that holds you back. And I did.
Agree.
Now, the chronograph has been helpful, especially when I started, like, getting off the beaten path, push, like looking at old obscure data, pushing the limits a little bit. The chronograph became really, really helpful. But I mean, hell, I reloaded for years without one.
If for pistols, it is less relevant, in my opinion. Can you, and did I make use of my chronograph to mimic a load? Yes, I did. It was extremely helpful in that. I was able to tune my velocity right into the average range of federal HSTs.
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. I probably could have got pretty close to that just by feel of the recoil. Mix a HST in one of mine and an HST in one of mine and shot all four. And if I couldn't tell the difference, that's probably close enough for most people's training needs. I wanted to go further than that. If you are just loading like plate knocker 5.56, 55 grains, do I think you need a chronograph? No, you don't. Now, find some published load data, find a load that cycles reliably and doesn't show pressure signs, and you're probably okay.
Now, I did earlier say get organized, and I will double down on get organized. And not just... So something as simple as a composition book is a good start. I literally start off with just sheets of paper with the loads that I found worked the best, tucked into the ammo cans with the ammo, and then I collated all of it together there. But like, have a method of keeping track of your pet loads, have a method of keeping track of the load development you're doing, the ladder loads you're testing. If you load, like I load, all my 9mm is loaded with the same bullet, with the same powder, with the same primer. I've got thousands of them. I don't have to keep track of what was this loaded with, because if it's in a can, I know what I loaded with. But when I start playing with those other powders, those other bullets, I'm going to have to get really judicious about putting notes in the cans to say, this is what this is, and this is what this is, if for no other reason than sanity. So, and more than that, and this is something I ran into recently when I reclaimed my reloading space, but I was literally finding brass that is not in the big bulk container that is like ready to process. And it didn't have primers in it yet, because I know if I primed it, it is ready to load.
Yeah.
It's in the middle, somewhere in between, where I think I sized it. I'm not sure if I washed it yet. I don't know if it's been bell mouthed yet. I have no freaking clue what I was doing with this brass 2 years ago. Yeah. I have lost that. My failure to stay organized, or letting my organization rely on my memory, which was a stupid idea, has now come back to haunt me. So when I say stay organized, I mean find a method of or keeping organized about what you're doing, what this brass is for, what step you're in. However you do this, organization is key. Taking notes is key. A chronograph is a nice to have.
It is a nice to have.
A progressive press is a nice to have. There's
Depends
a lot
on the volume you're shooting.
A huge stack of MTM cases to hold all your bullets and make them look pretty is a nice to have. A wet tumbler is a nice to have. There's a lot of nice to haves, but a lack of organization will 10 out of 10 screw you over in this hobby 100% of the time.
I agree. I started out using an Excel spreadsheet, and just because I had a laptop and I was already watching Stargate SG-1 while I was making ammo, so I had a screen right there to pull up the Excel sheet on. Printed paper slips, index cards, dope. If you got dope cards that you're done using because that dope data is no longer relevant, hell, use the backside of that.
That is the other thing I have to find.
Dope cards.
Okay, so in the name of full disclosure, and then we're going to move over onto this last. Since I'm laying bare all my freaking gun related sins tonight, apparently.
Have you never made dope cards?
No, don't beat me to the punchline, Nick. I made a dope card for my 308 Winchester. And I went one step further, and I actually downloaded like a copy of the reticle and marked the subtensions in there for ranges, for drops. And then I marked the lateral subtensions because, like, not exactly a state secret, but like the average dimension from shoulder to shoulder of a grown man is kind of a known average quantity. It's not hard to figure out, if you do a little bit of math, at what distance this is in those subtensions. So basically,
You can use it for improvised ranging, yeah.
So I turned this reticle and built a visual dope card that told me that if a person's shoulders are between this subtension and this subtension, they're approximately this range, and that is this subtension in your vertical drop. I built one of those. I freaking lost it. Have no freaking clue where it went. Printed it out. I thought it was with my rifle. But guess what? It's not. I think the reloading monster ate it.
No, that'll happen. I mean, look, because I live in an area that has quite wild temperature swings. We have -40 most winters, at least once or twice. We have 100 to 110. So that's 150-degree temperature range. I build dope cards for temperature and for barometric pressure at temperature if I can. If I get convenient days with slightly different barometric pressures, you can use maths to estimate those. And I usually try to indicate on my dope cards whether these are estimated calls or confirmed calls. So, like, for instance, I have my 30-06. If it is 30 degrees outside, I have a dope card for 30 degrees at 3 different barometric pressures. I have one for 40 degrees at 5 different barometric pressures because I've happened to be out there 5 different days with 5 different barometric pressures and confirmed those drops. Does it make a huge difference for, like, say, a hunting load? Not really. No, not really. But when I'm trying to play a game of darts at 300 yards against my coworker, who is a far better shot than me, you're damn right, that half-inch difference in drop at 300 yards makes a big difference.
That's fair.
It all depends on your application. Like, I would recommend, at the very minimum, if you're trying to put together a high precision rifle load, to try and get dope data and chronograph data every 20 degrees. Every 20 degrees. If you're trying to get really serious about your accuracy, because 20 degrees will affect your velocity very measurably.
Mm-hmm. So now on the opposite end of things, to round this out, what was maybe not helpful, but less helpful in this pursuit of, like, I'm doing load development, I'm trying to find my pet load, my pet favorite recipe. What was not helpful? We already talked about how, like, tuning the lead or the overall length of, like, certain bullets ended up being
completely unimportant.
Yeah. Now, another bullet, maybe like the Hornady ELDs, the AMAGs, hell, for all I know, there could be 100 bullets out there that are picky as hell about overall length. But in my
spear soft point hunting rounds are very picky about bullet jump in my rifle, at least.
But I will say that, like, in my experience, and I didn't know it until I tried it, Seer Match Kings don't really seem to care. But you still but you still have to try it to know it doesn't matter.
You do. And I thought they really didn't care for my rifle until I found the one spot where it really made a difference, and it was a noticeable difference. Stuart brings up a good point. Listening to FUDs at the range, not helpful. Listening to, I would say, how do I want to phrase this?
Taking someone else's pet load as gospel and not verifying it yourself.
Yes, that's what I was trying to go to. Like,
do not assume that my 42.5 grains at 2.8 OAL for my 308 with IMR 4064 is going to shoot lights out in every 308 Winchester rifle out there. It will not. It probably won't shoot. It probably won't shoot as well as mine does in any other rifle, and it might shoot better in some. But it
probably will shoot better in some, just with the odds.
Yeah,
but biggest thing that helped me out was shooting bags to help stabilize the rear of the rifle. That made the biggest difference in me trying to do load development for 2 reasons. One, the gun was more stable and I wasn't chasing my errors. And 2, it's just more comfortable for long-term shooting. There's not as much strain on your body while you're sitting there and putting 100 rounds downrange. Bullet selection matters a lot. Powder selection matters the most, in my opinion, because there are certain powders for certain bullet weights or for certain cartridges that just will not work well because they don't fill the case appropriately.
Yep. I'll go with that. I happened into a couple pounds of Vita Vori N337, I want to say. It's a not commonly used pistol powder, not even in 9mm, where I found some data for it, and my guns never liked it as well as they did pretty much every other damn kind of powder I've tried in it.
I cannot make Blue Dot shoot well in my 9mm, no matter what I do with it. It's just dirty. It's nasty. It dumps powder in the action, no matter how full I make the case, no matter how I do bullet setback. It just does not shoot well in my guns.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about what was not helpful when I started out reloading, or when I even got further into reloading, like what was not helpful. Oh,
buying more guns.
The thing I talked about last time. So you and I had this talk last time about how I came to realize that chasing the perfect overall length ended up being a Sisyphean task with, at least with Sierra Match Kings, because, and of course I don't have a bullet handy, but like, because the jacket is formed from the heel of the bullet to the tip, you always get a little bit of inconsistency with, with how that jacket came together at the very end. Now we're talking thousandths of an inch.
Yeah, it's burrs and deformation at the tip that you're dealing with there.
This, by the way, is the reason that a lot of bullet manufacturers went to the polymer tip bullets, and it's specifically because you can mold that polymer tip perfectly every single time.
Very consistent.
And it's a more consistent, but it's a cheaper way because you don't have to worry about it. Now, I have met some guys that shot F-class with Sierra Match Kings, and they went so far as to actually get like custom tooling built to like perfectly shave down and perfectly form all the tips of those bullets. So they would take a box of factory Sierra Match Kings, and then they would right size every one of the bullet tips. So they were all the exact same length, and there wasn't a jagged little burr or anything. They were all perfect in every way.
I got around that problem. I literally just took and chamfered the inside of a pipe that I had that was pretty close to the bullet size, so that the ogre of the bullet was sitting at the same place every time in that pipe. And I have that pipe milled to a certain length, and that's what I check my overall length with on those Sierra Match Kings. Because then you're checking on the same point on the curvature of the outside of the bullet, which is where your reloading die contacts the bullet anyway.
And that's what I ultimately started doing, was just I set my die based on a dummy round, and I stopped chasing overall length, because I realized that for my purposes, for this one type of bullet, the thousandths of an inch that I was monkeying around with that die to try to get them all exactly the right overall length, I was actually changing the internal case volume, because the die contacts at the ogive, and I was chasing those thousandths of an inch that were just the burrs at the end of the bullet.
Yeah, you were chasing ghosts, basically.
Yeah. Now, was it hurting anything?
Probably
I don't think so. Based on the fact that I got sub MOA out of that load, it wasn't hurting anything, but it certainly wasn't necessary either. I guess what I'm saying, like, from my perspective, like, in the pursuit of finding my favorite recipes, or finding the best recipes for my firearms, I think the thing that was the least helpful, honestly, was chasing everyone else's stuff. Like looking for other people's loads and then trying to reproduce those loads was not as helpful to me as getting a reloading book, finding a powder that was like roughly in the middle of a range for a bullet weight that I was messing with and a cartridge I was messing with. Not the fastest, not the slowest, just something in the middle of the range where I had lots of margin, and just ladder loading the SOB.
Yep.
And
I agree.
If a full ladder load from minimum until I saw pressure signs just never gave me a good group, I shit canned that whole load, find another powder to play with, because that one my gun just does not like. But I found that what was helpful to me was literally just following standard procedures, staying within published data, doing your ladder load, doing your due diligence, staying organized. Every time I try to get off the reservation and say, oh, so-and-so said 36.15 grains loaded at this very super specific OAL, is like, that's the perfect load. It was perfect in his rifle. It wasn't shit in mine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best thing I can tell you, is like going on the internet, going on like the High Road or whatever forum and looking for the keyboard warrior's favorite loads is going to be less helpful to you than just doing the work yourself.
Yeah, it can be, especially because barrels are almost a unique item. You're very unlikely to get two barrels that shoot the exact same, just because of the nature of the internal stresses in the metals, the manufacturing process, imperfections in the rifling, imperfections in the steel, and how your stock is contacting the barrel, which does make a difference. There's not a good way to guarantee that your barrel is the same as somebody else's.
I would say there's no way.
I don't like absolutes.
I know you don't, but you're the machinist.
I'm a machinist.
You're the machinist. But you and I both know
you can get damn close.
barrels might as well be fingerprints.
They are. They largely are, because the stresses are individualized due to heat treat and materiological composition.
Composition. But I mean, you could say that about almost anything that's manufactured. Is like, if you manufacture 100,000 of them, will you find two that are exactly the same? Possibly.
Not likely.
I mean, look, total side note, but like the night vision community goes through the same thing when they try to build a set of binos, because the first problem is you got to find two tubes that look the same.
They don't, because they never do.
Well, they're never going to look the same, but you got to find two that look pretty similar, because if not, it's going to really mess with the person when they one tube's wildly different than the other. That's why it's actually easier to find like a PBS 14 that's got a really screaming good tube in it, because they didn't have to go find another screaming good tube to put on the other side to make a bino.
Yep.
I don't know.
I think that's why a lot of people and a lot of companies have started going to thermal on one side, night vision on the other, because it's not so much of a conflict.
No, it's just a completely different content, because now your brain has to try to smash two very disparate images together. And
they do, but the people that can manage it, oh man, is that a trick?
That'll be a topic for another day.
Having never played with night vision extensively, I don't know whether or not I could make that work with my brain.
I mean, this summer we might be able to test that assertion.
We might.
Anyway, we do need to go ahead and call it. I have to get on the road in the morning, and I have an episode to edit in the meantime. But yeah, I don't know what else we really have to talk about in the vein of reloading. We might actually have to like quit fooling around and come up with other topics now that we've
Mother of God
fully tilled this field.
Yeah, probably will.
I say fully tilled this field. I mean, like I told you, the problem with reloading is like there are whole podcasts, there are whole YouTube channels dedicated to this hobby. We could talk about this nonstop for months.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know how much more there is at like an entry level, practical level there is to go down this road.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Unless one of the patrons, and we totally forgot to do the admin work.
I forgot the admin work too. Oh dear.
Well, this time we're going to do it at the back. This time we're going to do it on the back of the podcast. You should be a patron. You should buy Disaster Coffee, and you should buy a shirt from the Southern Gals. And I'm Phil. This is Nick. This is the Matter of Facts podcast. Good night, everybody. The least professional podcast on the internet.
Good night.